Truth Eternal by Samartha Guru Shri Ramachandraji Maharaj Lalaji of Fatehgarh UP. Chapter 8 Knowledge, Upasana, Happiness. So long as a man does not know the real nature of a subject, its effect and benefit, he will not be convinced of it, nor does he settle on it. And unless he settles on it, he does not get peace and happiness. The mystery of all happiness lies in the steadying and settling down of the activity of the mind, that is Chitta Vritti. Happiness is the heir or result of peace and rest. Such is the arrangement in the order of nature. All this game is according to that arrangement only. But knowledge or spirituality, on the importance of which so much stress is laid, concerns itself with the problem of bondage and otherwise. What has happened is happening or will happen and will continue to happen, and this goes on in its own sequence. Now the question is, where is the greatness of knowledge if everything happens automatically? Where is the need to know and for the desire and effort to know? The answer is that which is called knowing and the struggle to know also exist in the same order of nature. How can we escape from it? What is destined to happen would definitely continue to happen. Then the question would be, why should we bother when a certain thing happens without our bothering about it? In that case, our effort would be useless and the thing remains unattainable. The answer to this is, better do not worry. If there is no worry, it is well and good. But what we call worry is mind's itch, which is the result of inner desires. And so long as the desire is not fulfilled, it will be there working for fulfillment. This desire is called vasana in Sanskrit. Due to this alone, the human world comes into being, and unless this desire is transformed into desirelessness, one cannot get peace. The transformation of desire into desirelessness means stability, upasana and settling. This is secured either by knowledge or by contentment due to fulfillment of desire. A sort of stability comes after obtaining a desired thing. Hence, the wise have sung in praise of knowledge, and it is true to the word. The deficiency in discrimination, judgment, and firmness of mind is bound to be there so long as one does not gain knowledge. It is a known fact that a man who cannot take a quick decision and hesitates is always restless or is always perturbed. Another thing is that every condition does not always remain the same in nature. It has a rise and fall. For example, the waking state withdraws into the dream state, and the dream state naturally withdraws into the state of deep sleep. Again, the state of deep sleep rises either in dream state or in the waking consciousness. This is the daily routine called by the name Kala Chakra or Wheel of Time. Contentment and desirelessness are almost one and the same condition. The fulfillment of desire can be called bhog, and desirelessness of desire can be called yog. Yog is bhog as well. Tasting is bhog, and yoga is the name for the union of the essence. Knowledge and action both becomes one towards the end. Thousands of works, karma, are produced from one karma, one work, and innumerable desires take birth from the womb of one desire in the beginning. Not knowing about these things is to dwell in darkness. When experience is gained in performing action, that is karma, and removing desires, and when the mind is purified, the condition of knowledge opens. Then discrimination is awakened, one steps into the region of light, and the mind remains firm in desirelessness. Work, that is karma, is first stage, and knowledge, that is jnana, the last. Engaging in conversation without thinking and understanding is the first stage. It is called Mimamsa. Mimamsa are two. The first one, the Purva Mimamsa, or search for the first knowledge, and second, the Uttar Mimamsa, or search for subsequent knowledge. The first is action or work, that is karma, which is only related to the knowledge of the utilitarian status of the Vedas. If this is the idea, then it is the first stage. And Uttar Mimamsa is knowledge, but only that knowledge which is related to the essential status of the Vedas. This is the subsequent or superior stage. Those who understand them as such are not deluded, but those who perform ordinary action, keeping in view the fulfillment of some desire, raise action after action and desire after desire, and being caught in the web of this cycle, are thrown far away from the destination. Likewise, those who, knowing the purpose of knowledge, restrict themselves to mere argumentation, proof, and discussion, are lost midway. They become verbal pendants and will be nowhere. Action, that is karma, is the practical or utilitarian side of the manifestation of existence, whereas knowledge is its essential aspects. These two aspects are conjoined with middle link, which is the human heart. The very heart sends its current in the grosser regions of existence, causes the action to be performed and practiced, and thus arranges for the expression of its existence. The same heart sends its currents in the subtler regions, and assuming the heirship of its knowledge, settles in the middle. So long as it lies in knowledge and action, it enjoys the bliss of both. But if it leans completely towards either of the two, it becomes either this or that, because it has the reflection and influence of both the subtle and gross regions. If this heart is weaned away from both action and knowledge, and is taught to settle only on the subtler region, in that case the teaching is called Upasana. The result of this Upasana is designated as bliss and peace, which is kept as the final goal. But there is the pleasure of duality. In this Upasana, which is not to be relied upon, it is a defect. The gross region of the body is the place of multiple transformations of matter. The vritti or active current of mind is disturbed again and again from this place. And since happiness is the state of concentration and settling down of the disposition of the mind, misery or sorrow is experienced on its being disturbed. Its happiness is temporary, transient, dependent. It increases consciousness and thrown in hesitation. And one can attain neither enjoyment nor union with the ultimate. In the same way, with regard to the spirit, since it takes with it the influence and shadow of materiality, it cannot have a firm footing there also, and it goes there without any consciousness, and returns from there in the same condition. Desirelessness and contentment will not come. It remains imperfect and full of defects. The dualities of perfections are not developed in it, nor does it attain perfection. The scriptures describe three forms of happiness and misery. The first one is Adhibhautika, which is caused by creatures made of elements of nature. Second one is Adhidaivik, caused by fate or gods. And third one is Adhyatmik, caused by one's own heart in the heart. Thus, misery and happiness is caused according to the combination and influence of these. Happiness is the name of certain disposition of mind, of upasana, of the condition of firmness, settling and withdrawal of mind, and misery is the name of that disposition in which there is wicked desire, evil propensity, jerk, removal, and weakness. Except this, happiness and misery are nothing. The current of flows all over the body, from head to foot, in the form of currents through the veins and arteries. Happiness is experienced where it settles or dwells, and misery is experienced when it moves or is removed from there by force. It always plies between the physical, mental, and spiritual planes and experiences happiness and misery. If it travels of its own accord in a natural way, then it will not feel happiness and misery. On its settling, happiness is experienced while misery is experienced on its being removed by force. Thus, happiness and sorrow is the play of settling and moving or removal of the current of the mind. For example, two persons are playing chess. The minds of both are concentrated on the game. They are deeply interested in it and they get pleasure, freshness, and happiness. If a third man comes and annoys them or disturbs the game and overthrows the chessboard, their settled mind is perforce removed, or in other words, it was compelled to move. The result is the relation is cut off. There is disinterestedness and unhappiness. This is the first instance. Take another example. A person goes for a stroll in the garden. He is seeing flowers, creepers, avenue trees, and beautiful scenery, the area emitting fragrance. His disposition of mind is settled on it, and he is happy. If his attention is made to divert perforce through the influence of any individual event or opposition, his happiness is converted into sorrow. Take one more example. Sitar and tabla are being played. The songster is singing. The mental disposition of the hearer is immersed in the song or music, and he is happy. If someone removes him from that place, his disposition will be removed from there and he becomes unhappy. This disposition gets happiness when it makes the edible articles and the organ of taste as it centers and settles there. Remove the articles or bite the tongue. The disposition suddenly withdraws itself and the result will be unhappiness. Provoke a dog chewing a bone and see the result. When a man is hale and healthy, the current of mind flows through the veins and arteries and settles on the physical plane, which results in happiness. If there is an injury or the vein is cut or there is bleeding, the flow of the current will not settle. It has to move away again and again on account of the injury, and the result cannot be anything other than unhappiness. In the state of perfect health, the disposition settles, resulting in happiness. In ill health, it becomes unsettled and the result is unhappiness. If the abdomen functions well on the account of settling of the disposition, there is happiness. If there is heaviness or indigestion and the disposition is unsettled, there is a pain and unhappiness. Likewise, this is applicable to all conditions of ill health. There will be two conditions on rubbing ointment over the wounded part of the body. Either the continuity of the veins will be re-established without any hindrance to the current to flow, or that part will be benumbed and the disposition will cease to unsettle, with the result that there will be no unhappiness. When a sympathetic friend or physician, a guru, or an affectionate relative comes and sits beside a patient, the flow of the patient's mental disposition leaves the lower part of the body by the effect of medicine and reaches the brain, which unconsciously becomes its center as per natural law. So, there will be no feeling of pain when a person breaks his head by falling from a high mansion. The flow of his mind, due to the effect of the blow, leaves the lower part of the body and settles in the brain. There too, the same difference is found. Happiness is not anywhere outside. It is in our fixing the attention, in the steadiness of disposition, and in the withdrawal of our mind. Those who know this secret need not search for happiness outside. A person is engaged in a particular thought, making his heart as its center. He is merged in joy on knowing the result. This thought may pertain either to a mathematical problem or to an enigma in astronomy or to a question in philosophy, or it may be any other thought. There too, he gets happiness and is in a state of merger. If anyone disturbs him, the disposition is unsettled and he will feel unhappy. No other theory is tenable in the spiritual field except that of the flow of disposition and steadiness of attention. Spiritual happiness is nothing but steadiness, settling, and peace. Thank you for listening.